Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'm going to be teaching you guys how to build a very simple beginner-based CRUD application using React and Supabase. If you're familiar with my videos, you know I've made many tutorials in the past where I go over how to build CRUDs. For those who don't know, Supabase is an open source Firebase alternative which has been gaining a lot of popularity recently. It's a backend as a service platform which has a Postgres database as its core and allows you to host it yourself without having to deal with something like hosting on Firebase. People love how easy it is to build a REST API using Supabase, and for that reason, they've been moving away from using other backend as services like Firebase. There's a lot of benefits and I'll definitely get into them in the video, but since this is a beginner tutorial, I want to focus more on how to get a simple CRUD set up and how to connect your app to Supabase in React. Before we get into the video, if you guys could leave a like and turn on the notification bell, I would massively appreciate it. If you guys might know, I'm coming back to YouTube after a long break and I would appreciate any support I can get. I also put the code for this video's tutorial in the description, together with a link to an article containing a step-by-step guide to this tutorial in text base if you guys are interested in reading instead of watching the video. Now that we're done with the intro, let's get into the video. Okay everyone, so let's get started with the tutorial. So I have over here, just to start off, application opened inside of VS Code. I just created a folder called Supabase CRUD and I just opened it inside of this project. Now I don't have anything yet. We're going to go through everything with you. But I want to start off by creating our project on the Supabase platform. You should go to supabase.com, and if you don't have an account already, you should create an account. They have a free tier that doesn't require any credit cards or anything like that. It's the same as Firebase, where you most likely, unless you're making a project that is going to be used by a bunch of users, you probably won't need to pay at all. So go to supabase.com, create your account. Usually you'll just authenticate with GitHub and you'll get to a page similar to this one. Now, what we want to do is create a new project. I'll call it Supabase CRUD. At least for my case, right? And then we want to put a strong password. Since this is going to actually protect our Postgres database, we want to make it pretty strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on generate a password. Thing is, this password is auto-generated, like I said. I'm going to actually copy this and I'm going to create a file over here called password. Just for now, you don't have to do this. Oh, I need to make it txt. And I'll just paste it over here. This is my password. By the way, I'm going to delete this project right after filming this video, so you can't access my database, but this is the password that I'm going to be using. Now, I want to choose a region, and you should choose the region that is closer to where your users are going to be accessing your website. Obviously, this is for improving performance, because the closer it is, the better performant it is. So I am indeed in Vancouver, so it is probably the west, but they don't seem to have an option here. So I'm going to choose Central Canada. And there's more security options if you want to, but to be honest, I'm not gonna touch any of that. Now I want to click on create new project. It's going to create our project and I'll be back in a second when it's done. Perfect. This is what you should see. This will show you your organization, that again, it's free, and then the project that you're working on, and it will show you all your API keys and your project configurations. Now, I'm going to copy this API key and I'm going to put it over here just for us to keep track of. I'm also going to reveal this and copy, and I'm going to paste it over here. Obviously, we can go back and see all of this, but for now, I'll just keep it like this. And what I want to do is come here to the left and go to database. Now, inside of here, we'll be able to see all of our databases and a visualizer of our schema. Now, what we want to do is go to the table editor. This thing will allow us to create a new database table and insert some sort of data inside of it. So I'm going to click over here on create new table. It's going to ask us for a name. In our case over here, we want to create, as an example, a to-do list application. Now, why am I making a to-do list application? Because I feel like it's the easiest application to understand a framework. You're not learning how to build the application, you're learning how to use Supabase and React to do that. So let's get that out of the way. Let's create a to-do list app. So I'm going to create here to-do list items, or to-do list. whatever. And I'll put here something list of items I want to do. Perfect. Now there are other options over here that we can play around with, but we're going to go down here to columns, and we want to add a couple columns that are going to be necessary in our database table. So by the default, it comes with an ID column and created at column. This is very standard in SQL databases. Remember, we're using Postgres here. We want to add some default ones. So I want to add the name for the item. Now this will have a type. And if you're not familiar with SQL types, there's a bunch that you can put in. Obviously, ours is going to be text, just like this, and it won't have any default value. Now, by default, because we have here a null value, it asserts over here that this column can assume a null position. But in reality, we don't want to create a to-do list with items that are possibly null. So I want to remove this option over here. Now I want to add one more item to the list, and it's going to be if the item is completed or not. So we're going to call it is completed. And we're going to put over here a type of a Boolean, right? Either true or false. And by default, we'll make this be false. Now that we're done with this, I want to save the columns that we created, and it will start creating our new table. When it's done creating the table, we should see it over here, and it has the same columns that we created. Everything looks fine. And when it's done creating, we should see something like this, where we have the table over here on the left, and we should see the columns that we created. Now we're pretty much done to start working on our code. So I'm going to close this over here, and we're going to move towards our application. Again, we are inside of a folder over here, and we want to generate our application using Vite. So I'm going to run the command npx create Vite, and then just press enter. Now it's going to ask us for our project name. I'm going to put dot because I just want to make it inside of this current file. It's asking us if we want to remove existing files or ignore files and continue, which is what I want to do because I want to keep my password.txt file. You probably didn't see that if you didn't make that file. Then I'm going to choose React over here. I'm going to choose JavaScript just so that I can make it accessible for those who don't know TypeScript. And then I'm going to run npm install, and I'm going to open up a new terminal, and I'm going to run npm run dev. What happened? Oh yeah, I should probably no, this should be working. Npm run dev. I don't know why that didn't work. Oh, I think it's because it was still installing. But yeah, let's open up our local host over here and refresh it. You should see a boilerplate React Vite application. Now, what we want to do is we want to install the Supabase client inside of our Vite app. So I'm going to run the command npm install, and I'm going to install at supabase/supabase-js. Now, this is the library we want to be using, and it's going to help us connect our project in our code with our project in the Supabase platform. Now, let's close this over here, and I'm going to open up our application, right? We have our app.jsx over here. I'm going to delete all of this. I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger over here. And what I want is to just clean this up and leave it at a very minimal state. Now I want to create a file which is going to be our configuration file for our Supabase client. So I'm going to call it Supabase client config. Actually, just Supabase client. That's fine. And inside of here, we're going to generate our Supabase client instance. So to do that, we're just going to import at the top, and we're going to import from at Supabase.js, and we want to import the create client function. Now over here, we're going to define two different things: our Supabase URL and our Supabase, Supabase key. Now we're going to get both of them from the platform, but we'll say const Supabase is equal to create client, and we want to pass both the URL followed by the key. Perfect. Now, how do we get the key and the URL? Well, we can just come to our home thing over here, and we'll see that we can access both our URL and our key directly from here. So our URL, I'll keep it here. Now let's just copy this API key and put it over here. Now this is fine, right? Well, no, because we don't want to put API keys, and we'll probably want to keep the URL as well on environment variable file. So what we want to do is create our .env file that is going to exist in our project. Now over here, we want to put our environment variables, and the ones that we want is our Supabase key and our Supabase URL. So I'm going to create those variables, Supabase key and Supabase URL. Now, since we are in Vite, we have to put a Vite in front of this. And let's just set the key equal to this. Perfect. And the project URL equal to this. Perfect. Now I'm going to save this. And in order to set both of these variables equal to what we want, I'll have to import.meta. Oh, it's all capitalized. Wait. Import.meta.env.vite Supabase URL. We'll do the exact same thing over here, but for the key. So Supabase key. Perfect. Now that we have this done, we want to just export the default Supabase. And now we'll have access to it in our app.jsx if we import Supabase from the Supabase client. Perfect. Now, like I said, this is going to be a very simple to-do list because the main focus of the video is just how to integrate Supabase on React. So I'm just going to be building a very simple one component to-do list, right? So let's start off by building the skeleton of our JSX. So the beginning will just be a div with an h1 tag that will say to-do list, just to make it simple. Then I want to have another div, which is going to contain the form for creating a new to-do. So it's going to be an input, and this input will be of type text, and it will have a placeholder just for now, which will say new to-do, 3 dots. And we'll create the rest later, but the button that we want to create below it will say add to do item. Perfect. Now, we won't do anything to this button properties for now, but below this, we want to create an ordered list, which is going to display the list of items from our to-do list. Now, in order to hold data to this to-do list, I need to have a state. So I want to create a state that is going to be called to-do list and a function that is going to be called set to-do list. Then I'm going to set this equal to use state, and this will start out as an empty list. Now, in order to create a new to-do list, we have to also keep track of what the user is typing on this input. So to do that, I'm going to create a state called new to do and set new to do and set it equal to a use state, which is a string. So it's going to start off as an empty string. Now for now, we'll keep it like this. We're just, as most CRUDs happen, we're just creating the read and the create part of the CRUD, right? So what we want is that for whenever someone is typing on this input, for them to populate this new to do variable. So I'm going to add an onChange property over here. It's going to have an event. And every time there's a change in this input, I want to set the new to do equal to the event.target.value. And then just save this so that we can keep track of this state. Now this is where we can actually start working with Supabase, because we want to call a function called add to do. And this function is going to be async and is not going to take in anything, but it's going to be called whenever we click on this button. Now inside of here, we want to call the Supabase variable or client that we created over here. So I'm going to create a constant, set it equal to await Supabase, and we'll populate this because we don't know yet what it's going to return, but we're going to get there. And in the Supabase, we need to specify what we want to do inside of our project. So we're already connected with our actual Supabase project over here. Now what I want to say is that I want to get information from our to-do list table over here. So we say Supabase from, and then we pass in to-do list, just like this. We'll say dot insert to insert data. And we pass in over here a list of data that we want to insert. Now, of course, we only want to insert one piece of data. So let's generate that object over here. We'll create new to-do data. And it's going to be an object containing first the name of the to-do, which is going to be the new to-do, and an is completed property, which obviously will be false by default. Now I'll pass this information over here, and then we want to specify that it will be a single. Now this is going to return some data and some error. So I want to specify that I want to return a single piece of data, since this is not going to be an array that is going to be returned back. And with this, we can grab back the data variable and the error variable. Now those two can help us a lot, because first we can check to see if there was any error in our request. Because if there was one, I want to simply console log a message saying error adding to do, and let's see what the error was. Now, if there was no error, then we want to set our to-do list to be equal to its previous value, but with the new item in the end. So I'll say prev and then add the new the data inside of here. And we'll also set the new to-do from the input to be equal to an empty string so that we can reset that input. Perfect. Now let's test to see if this is working. I'm going to put a new to-do, for example, clean house. I'm going to click on add to-do item, and we should see an error message. Now, why am I expecting an error message? Well, because I purposely left something out so that I can address this common issue that most beginners run into, which is possibly running into a message saying that the new row violates row level security policy for the table. Now, what is row level security in Supabase or Postgres? Well, RLS, which is what it's known for, basically allows you to define policies that control access to individual rows in your database tables. Now, you can specify, for example, only authenticated users can access a row in a table, or only certain types of users can access certain types of operations in a table. Now, since this is a beginner tutorial, to be honest, want to keep it out of sight. So I'm going to click over here and add RLS over here, and I could specifically create a policy, but I'm going to disable RLS, meaning that it will be insecure, but in the sense that my table can read and write for basically everyone. So if you've worked with Firebase in the past, you know that they allow rules, and this is basically how you set up if you're developing. And if you're developing, I recommend just taking all the rules out, because you want to probably have access to all of your database operations. So now that we did that, we technically can indeed create a new item. I'm going to console log over here, and we'll click the same information, and we should not see an error message, which is what happened. This means that our table over here probably has the new item, and it doesn't, or it does. Yeah, it does over here. So we see we created an item of ID 3, created at this time. The name is clean house, and is completed is equal to false. This is great. So we know that we are correctly connecting to Supabase. Now we want to be able to fetch all of our items and display them in the screen. I'm just going to add a couple more items. I'm going to put here, put food to pets, and probably, what else? Do homework. Okay. Now, one thing you might notice actually is that this is not clearing up, even though we made it clear up over here. And this is because we didn't set the value of this input equal to new to do. So whenever we do that now, it will clear up, as you see. So what I want to do now is fetch all of our to-dos. Now, to do that, I'm going to create a fetch to-dos function, and it's also going to be async. And I'm going to, inside of here, again, the structure response that is going to come back from Supabase. And for fetching data, it's pretty simple. We have to, again, specify the table we want to fetch from. So I'm going to say the to-do list table. And we just want to operate some sort of SQL query. Now, if you're familiar with SQL, you should know that if you want to query everything from this table, all you have to put over here is an asterisk. This means all. So it will fetch everything from this table and it will return it to us. Now, it's going to return as a data or an error, similar to the create operation. And you might have noticed that we didn't specify single because this should return an array. Now, we'll do the same type of error handling where we'll say if there's any errors, then we want to console log a message saying error fetching, and we'll put over here the error. But if there was no error, we just want to set our to-do list equal to the data. Perfect. Now we want to call this fetch to do function by on first render. So I'm going to call it inside of the use effect. And remember, if you're building a real application and if you're not a beginner, I don't recommend fetching data on your use effect because use effect is not technically meant for that, although every single beginner usually starts doing it this way. I would recommend using something like React Query or any other data fetching solution, but I think it's perfectly fine for us to do this for this tutorial. So we're going to fetch data over here, and if I refresh my page, it seems like nothing is happening because we haven't dealt with the data, but it should be fetching the data. Now, how are we going to deal with this data? Well, the way I want to do it is inside of this unordered list that we created down here, I want to loop through our to-do list by using the map function, and it's going to give us a to-do object. And this object is going to return back, I'm going to actually return back a parentheses, and it's going to return back a list item, which is going to have a little p tag over here, which is going to be the name of the item. So we're just going to grab the name from the to-do. Now we know there's a name property because that's how we created the database table. And you can see over here that we purposely got the information. Now we want to add a button, which is going to allow the user to either complete or undo a completion if they just completed a task. So the way to do that is we're going to put the task over here. It's going to be dependent on the isCompleted variable. And if it is completed, so if the task is completed, we want to put an undo button. But if it isn't, we're going to put a complete task button. So what this will basically do is over here on the right, we'll see that since all of them has the isComplete function, isComplete property as false, it will say complete task. But when we add the functionality to change that, we'll click on this and it will become undo. Now, we also want to put a button down here, which is going to be for deleting the to-do item. So I'll say delete to-do or delete task probably, and it will be right next to this. It will completely remove it from the page. Now, what do we want to do first? Well, I want to deal with the update first, which is this functionality over here. We're going to pass an onClick over here, and it's going to call a function called complete task. And let me fix this. Now let's create this function. We're going to create it probably below the to do. We're going to say const complete task equals to async. And this function is probably going to require the ID of the to do item. So I'm going to put ID over here. And we also want to know if the current item is completed or not. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pass the is complete. Perfect. And now we want to come down here, and since we want to pass some arguments to this function, I want to pass an inline function over here, and we'll pass in the todo.id, and the to-do.isCompleted. Perfect. Let me make it right. Perfect. So in our complete task over here, we want to, again, destructure the Supabase client response. And this has to be an await. And we'll say Supabase dot from to-do list, similar to the other ones. You're probably starting to get the hang of it. We'll say update, and we'll pass in an information first of what field we want to update and what value we want to be updated. So the field I want to update from a specific item in this list is the isCompleted. And I also need to change this. We want to probably pass the opposite of whatever is passed over here. So if it's positive, we're going to make it negative. If it's negative, we'll make it positive. Now, what we have to specify is which item in our table we want to make this update from. And that's why we have the ID. Now, to find that item, we use this EQ function, which is going to allow us to do this operation on a specific item where the primary key over here, the ID key, is equal to the ID that we pass over here. Now, this is going to return that information, either a data or an error. And inside of here, we'll check for that again. We'll say if error is equal to true, then we want to console log some error toggling task. And then we'll just pass in the error message as well. But if it's not an error, then we want to handle our functions. So we'll create updated to-do function over here, to-do list. And we'll set it equal to the to-do list that we currently have, .map. And we'll map through each specific items of our list. And we'll find the item in which has the item ID equal to the ID that we just updated. And when that's true, then we want to return back the same object as it currently is. So with the same name, ID, created date, all of that. So we'll do to do, but the isCompleted field is equal to the opposite of itself. So we're doing it manually over here, but we also have to pass back the empty case. I'll just explain what this is. We're just creating a new version of the list in which all the other items in this list are the same, but the item we want to toggle to complete or not complete or incomplete, we are just changing its value of the isCompleted to the opposite of currently what it is. And we're only doing this in case we know for a fact that it actually updated in the database, right? Now, what we do is we just set the to-do list equal to the updated to-do list. And we'll see now that if we have done everything correctly, when we click on Clean House, it should update this button and it should actually, as you can see, stay updated. I'll refresh this over here and we should see that that information should be now true in the database because it is completed. So we kind of handled the update part of our CRUD and the creation and the reading. So now all we have left is the deletion. Now, to delete a task, which is basically deleting it completely from our database, we'll create over here an onClick function called delete task. And we're probably going to need the ID of this task as well. So it will also be an inline function. And we'll pass in the ID over here by saying todo.id. Oh, todo.id. Perfect. Now, over here on the top, we'll create this function, delete task. And again, it will be async. At this point, you probably should be used to how Supabase works, at least in a basic sense. And to make things faster, I'll copy this whole complete task logic that we have because it's all very similar. We'll also have to check for the to-do list application, but instead of updating, we're also going to be accessing the to-do list from the Supabase. But instead of updating, we're going to be deleting. Now, the delete function doesn't require any arguments to it. It will delete a specific item, indeed, but you specify the item based on the ID, just like we did with the update. So this is how you delete an item. We also changed this to deleting task in case there's any errors. And over here, literally we delete this. We don't need that logic to, like, if you're not familiar, but to delete an item from a state, all you need to do is grab the previous list and you just say previous dot filter, and you filter for the specific to do that you want to delete, and you'll just keep all the items in which the ID is not equal to the ID that you want to delete. So now if I click on delete task, it should actually delete it, but it should be kept deleted because we just deleted it from our database as well. We'll check, and I'll only have 2 items indeed. So this is basically it for our simple CRUD using Supabase. Now, this is a very powerful service. I enjoy it sometimes even more than Firebase. I think Firebase is constantly decreasing in its popularity and its edge over other alternatives, and Supabase is becoming really popular. That's why I've been using it in a couple of the projects that I've been building on my free time, and I definitely recommend you trying it out as well. Now, if you want to check out the code, the entire code for this will be in the description, together with a link to my personal website where I post text-based articles for all of my tutorials. So in case you want to keep track of all of that as well, and other things as well, check out PedroTech.co. I really appreciate everyone for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. Subscribe because I'm posting twice a week and I would massively appreciate it. And yeah, that's basically it. Really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys next time.